evening, EBC. Cherie here again from the Christian Education Ministry, back with another mental health awareness video. So May is actually Mental Health Awareness Month. And so today I have with us two wonderful ladies who are experts in the field with social work and mental health populations. So we have Dr. Crystal Hayes. Say hi, Crystal.
Hello.
And so Sedania Gibbons
Yes.
joining us as well. So say hi, Sedania. Perfect. All right, ladies. So just wanted to kind of start off with, if you can just kind of let us know who you are and what you are actually doing kind of in the field and kind of really how you got started, and we can kind of jump in from there. So Sedania, did you want to start us off?
Sure. So I started in the field in 1994. I worked at a family preservation agency in Watts. After I graduated with my bachelor's degree in law and society, I planned to go into law because I wanted to help people. I just didn't know how I wanted to help people until I got to family preservation and I was exposed to the world of social work and therapy and child welfare all in one spot. And so that began my career in social work. So I went into to my MSW program, and after graduating, worked in child welfare for 8 years and worked around the child welfare arena for some time in adoption programs and kinship programs, and then later on transitioned into community mental health and worked for the Department of Veteran Affairs with chronically unhoused veterans with mental health and substance use issues. And then I've done some work in quality assurance and mental health for the County Mental Health Agency, and have worked in, then transitioned into academia. So I've been teaching in social work programs since 2011 and preparing the next generation of MSWs to go into the field. And that's what I currently do at Cal State San Bernardino. I was going to say Santa Barbara, but Cal State San Bernardino, where I'm currently working in the MSW program.
Nice. So you kind of had your hands in multiple pots, and that's kind of the beauty of the social work field, right? We may start off in one field with one passion, and then we're like, oh, I like that, and we're able to kind of venture off and do different things. So I love that. So thank you. And Dr. Hayes?
Yeah, so I think the social work profession drew me to it. I took an undergrad class in like intro to social work, and I was like, these are my people right here. But most times when you enter into a master's program in social work, you have to do an internship, and it's not uncommon that you just are assigned where you're going to go for your internship. And so my assignment was to go into a community mental health clinic. And now I come from a fairly stereotypical Black family where mental health stigma is high. And so when I remember telling my parents, family, that my internship was going to be in this mental health clinic, like all of the possible stigmas you can imagine starts to come out. Oh, those crazy people gonna get you. You better watch your back. You're gonna get plaintiff in there. I don't know about that. You should go ask to change your placement, right? So all of the things start coming out. So I'm petrified walking into my first day of my internship at this mental health facility. And it was me and another intern. We show up on the first day and we go to like open the door and it was locked. So we're like, oh snap, what's going on? And a security person comes down and I was like, oh, the lobby's just on lockdown right now. You know, somebody's having a little situation, but you guys can come in a second. And we both were like, oh my God, you know what is it? Anyway, God knows what he is doing. Because I got up in that place and absolutely fell in love, right? Fell in love with this whole world of mental health and had my heart broken around the things that folks are struggling with, oftentimes in like shame and secrecy. I was the only Black clinician at the agency, and you know, that was another just layer that I didn't quite understand. And many of my Black clients identified as followers of Christ and were just struggling with, why would God let this happen to me? Why would he let me struggle like this? And so sitting with folks in their despair and some of their darkest times is it's painful and such a privilege at the same time. So I fell in love then, and so pursued a career in community mental health and working with folks with severe and persistent mental illnesses. So things like, depression and different forms of psychosis and bipolar disorder and all the things. Got licensed as a social worker. But sometime in that journey, I began to feel a little burned out, right? Because you can only hear all the most terrible things of a person's life for so long before it starts to kind of impact you. And so I was able to transition into more community level mental health promoting work. So that put me in a position of working with a lot of churches and nonprofits and doing education on mental health and mental illness, and trying to support different organizations, especially churches, and trying to promote the mental health of their members. And that's when I realized we got a lot more problems, right? Like pastors were describing how their congregants are coming to them with all kinds of things they are not equipped and trained to handle. You know what I mean? Because oftentimes, particularly among Black Christians, when we're faced with mental, emotional, personal problems, you can go to your pastor first, right? You have that trusted relationship. You're not gonna come to one of us with licensed credentials on how to help you work through your mental, your mental state and your trauma, but go to their pastors, and pastors were just saying that they were not feeling equipped for that. And so eventually that led me into pursuing a doctoral degree in social work, really with the hope and goal of, Cherie, my whole life's journey has led me to this one moment, this one right, of being able to kind of bridge this gap between the world of mental health that I feel passionate about and my church community.
Yes, I love it. I love both of those things. And so it's like micro, then macro. Now we're like community, academia, pouring back to the next generation of social workers. I know both of you guys are very passionate about doing that. And so we've had some opportunities to kind of work together on some level. So just really excited again for the opportunity to be able to sit with both of you all and just kind of have a little discussion about where we are in 2024 with mental health in our communities, our churches, even in the school system. Some things that you guys may be seeing in the school system and academia world with those maybe struggling with some mental health challenges. So I'm just going to jump into the questions. So number one, in no specific order as far as who wants to answer, we're just going to kind of have a discussion. So the first one says, what are the most common mental health problems our society is facing today? What would you ladies say? Whoever wants to start.
So defer to Dr. Hayes, but I'll go. So the first thing that I'm seeing that is most prevalent is anxiety. You're getting a lot of anxiety and depression. And that is from youth, elementary school kids, all the way on up to adulthood. So we're seeing that it's coming out in different ways. Suicide rates have risen for certain age groups, even in small age children, that we weren't seeing before. And if you think about the soup that is post-pandemic, part of it was there was a huge socialization piece that was missed for some of those young kids because they were at home on Zoom rather than being able to socialize and reach their different developmental levels by interacting with others.
Right.
And so you've seen that, and then also, facing some of the traumas and losses that everybody faced during a pandemic. You have death, loss, grief, and that's trauma. You have parents who probably lost their jobs. That's trauma. People became unhoused. That's trauma. And so it's just stacking on top of each other. And now we're trying to catch up because one of the other things that exposed during the pandemic was that everybody didn't have equity in terms of access to the internet, which was the basis for you to get your education. So the education gap, again, then widens, and so on and so forth. So yeah, a lot of what I'm seeing is an increased anxiety, increased depression, and from all ages.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I know, and I'll let you jump in, Crystal. But in some of my private practice clients, I provide for some kids, and they're having a lot of trouble still in school because of kind of post pandemic as they going back, but then also a fear of kind of these lockdown situations and the threats on campus. Um,
Hmm.
and feeling a lot of that. So they're struggling exactly what you said with the anxiety, the fear. They don't want to go back to school. They just rather be online. And so we know, yes, it's a wonderful tool to be online, but like you said, they're missing the socialization. And so there's other things that they're starting to lack in certain areas. And that's an important part of a child's development. So yeah, to your point, it's I think it was the pandemic, but then also just like with the school shootings and all those things, it forced us to kind of talk about it. What's going
And
on?
kind of at the same time the pandemic was hitting, and
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna be quiet so Dr. Hayes can speak, is that you also had this convergence of one of the craziest political environments we've seen in our lifetime. And
Yeah.
so you had this divisiveness, you had all this racism coming up, and even right prior to the pandemic, you had all of these like deportations and children in cages, and that impacted not only the community that was being put in cages, it impacted everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, we had students who were Americans. Like I had a coworker, and her brother called her, was like, "Are they gonna take me?"
Mm-hmm.
She's like, "Baby, you were born here, not gonna take you." And for those who believe in, some historical trauma, it also brought up some things for us who have that same experience, that even if we didn't consciously react to it, subconsciously, you react to children being separated from families and being put in cages.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so that all of that soup, the shootings,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not safe at school, I'm not safe in the community because the police
Mm-hmm.
will put their knee on my neck. Like all of
Mm-hmm.
that together
Yeah.
um, made a big toxic soup that created some of this anxiety that we're seeing.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Dr. Hayes.
Yeah,
But the,
I agree with everything you both said, anxiety, depression, and I guess one thing that I'll also add, and again, the pandemic put this in hyperspeed, right? That now we have more people have language to describe the stuff that was already going on, right? Like those of us who have been mental health providers for a while,
yeah.
we already new folks was barely hanging on.
Right.
It just usually took things to get to an extreme before they would come and see us, right? Now, though, there is more common language
Yeah.
to describe things that were never normal, right?
Right.
That should have never been acceptable to like just go through your life, barely sleeping or sleeping all day long and not
Right.
want to be around your friend. Like that was never okay. But now I think more people have language to say like, oh, maybe I'm depressed, right? That in a kind of cruel irony, the COVID pandemic did increase our collective awareness around mental health and mental illness because we all got to experience going crazy at the same time, right? So in a weird way, it kind of decreased stigma in a sense, right?
Yeah.
That people have language. My mother jokes all the time that she hates this commercial about toxic stress. There's a commercial that plays that talks about how certain environments and exposures in young children creates what we call toxic stress, right? Some of us call we know about adverse childhood experiences that increase mortality rates, just all kinds of problematic things. And she hates it because she's of a generation where it was like, just tough it up.
Yeah.
Everybody's parents, punch each other. You know what I mean? Or like everybody,
Yeah.
everybody sees somebody getting killed in the streets or whatever. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
certain things that, especially in the Black community, especially among folks who maybe have experienced poverty, living in urban environments, substandard housing, all of that. Certain things that were never okay were normalized, and so now we're just starting to like get language and understanding around like, nah, that's not okay, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing more people become more willing to acknowledge mental or emotional problems that they're having and more willing potentially to seek professional help for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's a perfect segue to the next question about how do we see mental health? How has it evolved in communities of color and in the church? Because I do agree that it has kind of normalized the conversation more. But I don't know. I'm engaging in some conversation where it's still very kind of a lot of pushback. People don't want to talk about it, and I'm like, but
Yeah.
it's this literally just happened to you. Like it's happening now. It happened to your grandchild, and so people are still kind of pushing back in certain areas. So kind of what are your thoughts on that? How has it involved mental health evolved in our community in churches?
I think we're going to see some generational differences for
Mm.
sure, right? Because it's interesting. I mean, the younger generation, I think we're on what, like Gen Zs, Alphas, all of them, they're growing up in a different kind of like mental health climate.
Yeah.
Where with some younger folks, it's almost cool to have a
Right.
therapist.
Right.
Like,
Trending. Mm-hmm.
so that caught me off guard by
Yeah.
surprise, seeing that
Mhm.
happen, especially so quickly. Again, I think the pandemic put that in hyperspeed,
Yeah.
but just a real kind of openness to like, of course I would get a mental health checkup in the same way that I would go to my physical doctor, which
Yeah.
makes me glad because that's the kind of message I know many of us have been promoting for a long time. But there is still a struggle with, folks who that is not a norm, and we've grown up with a lot of stigma that, if you crazy, you know what I mean, like, and don't talk about, your private stuff, what happens
Yeah.
in the family stays in the family, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of spiritualizing things. So you know what I mean, you're not praying enough, you're not fasting enough, you know what I mean, you need to
Hey.
do
Uh-huh.
other spiritual exercises
Yep.
to to manage things that, like, that's a trauma response. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't that's not an issue with your prayer life necessarily.
Right.
So I'm seeing the generational divide. Are you guys, I don't know if you guys are seeing similar things.
Yeah.
Totally. And I want to say, like, my first placement when I was in MSW program was at Allen Temple Baptist Church in Oakland. So I was one of the first interns placed there to build out their social service ministry. And at the time, I'm a Christian, and at the time that I went there, my field instructor was like, "Don't go there. You're not going to be able to get hired in, child welfare because you're not going to get the experience that you need." Blah blah blah. But what I want to say is it's because of forward thinking pastors who now understand and embrace mental health
Right.
rather than attributing it or spiritualizing it, because that pastor, J. Alfred Smith, was on the forefront of recognizing and understanding that mental health does exist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, God created doctors and medication, and so we should take it when we need it. And so it's really, really important, I think, that the Black church, and that was in 1996.
Wow.
So the Black church now, and some, not all, but some are on the forefront. I've only had ministers that I've only ever been under ministers who believed in mental health, who talk about therapy from the pulpit. I've never been under a pastor or minister to say, let's throw your medication away. Because I wouldn't stay in a church like that because it's just not helpful. You wouldn't tell somebody to throw away their heart medications. So I think you're definitely seeing a difference in generationally people willing to seek therapy in the African American community, particularly our younger generations. And one of the gifts of the pandemic, and there were some gifts that came out. One was telehealth. So the explosion of telehealth, which then opened access to our community. So being able to go to therapy session in the middle of the day is a privilege.
Right.
That's a privileged person who can do that. If I can get a therapy session at night after 7, after 8, after I done pick my kids up and cook dinner, then I can still get my therapy session in. If I'm a mom and I don't have to drive all over Timbuktu and my child can get telehealth, it really opened up access in a big way in our communities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love to hear that. You said your pastor back in the 90s was so
Mhm.
pro mental. I've never heard of anything.
That's trend setting.
Yes.
Well, Pastor J. Alfred Smith is the trendsetter. He's international in that he was on the forefront. And one of my dean, she was a member of his church at the time, and she worked really hard to set up that placement. And it was, it was needed. And they had like 52 ministries. Like it was a mega church back,
Wow.
then. Like it was the original place where the Black Panther Party meetings happened in Oakland. So they were always on, and still are to this day, on the forefront. So it's really great to see that here we are today, and churches are having these conversations. My past church, one of the things that was one of my ministries was social service ministry, and I was trying to increase the ministry so that the pastors didn't have to carry stuff that they didn't go and get trained clinically to do. And so what we had there were, with this program called Curative Conversations, we had like a post-traumatic stress group, a depression group, a single and dating. Like we had these groups where people could come and have those discussions, and trained facilitators. So it's good to see that that's where we are today.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't know if Crystal was going to touch on it, but we were able to do some work at my previous church, and our pastor was really on board with the whole concept of mental health, and like as far as like I know I'm limited in certain areas. I know I have a certain amount of pastoral counseling, biblical counseling in my tool belt, but he was able to assess and knew when it was time to kind of refer. And even in the church I'm at now, with Pastor Turner, allowing a platform like this, allowing discussions to happen, and so I'm truly grateful for the opportunity. And I don't know, Crystal, do you have anything to chime in on that one?
Yeah, just that, I do think we are moving in the right direction. When I remember talking to, some of the old saints, seasoned saints, who've been in the church for a long time, especially because I grew up in a historically Black church tradition. And there was the time when even a lot of like physical health things were stigmatized, you know what I mean? Where folks were like praying away physical ailments. And the way that started to change and shift in the culture of the church was having more medical doctors and professionals in the church to help show folks, no, these two things can coexist. No, I do need, so that now we don't even think about it. We don't even think about the fact that somebody will get prayed over and Lord, touch their doctor's hands. And you know what I mean? When you talk to some older, church saints, that was not the norm. That was not the norm, right? And so I think, mental health, we're moving in that same direction where, my hope and prayer is another, 10 years from now, like these kind of conversations will seem silly, you know what I mean? Because it'll be so normal to seek help when you need it, do things to promote your mental well-being, and be a faithful Christian at the same time.
Absolutely. Just kind of second nature, right?
And I think it really calls for a certain type of leadership, and like I alluded to when I talked about the pastors who were pro mental health. One of my former pastor, before I moved here to Southern California in 2020, he would talk about from the pulpit about being a survivor of sexual abuse. And he talked about going to therapy. And the pastor that is now over that church also talked about his struggles with mental health, including suicidality. So it really takes leadership embracing this to then give it to the congregation. Because if you're still feeding people myths and don't take your medication, like your son is schizophrenic, he needs to take his medication. He thinks that the FBI is following him. He can't operate in society, can't go to work, those types of things. So I think that I'm glad to see that we have leadership that is leading the people that they shepherd in this way.
Right. And then especially just in our communities, I feel like though the first time I really heard about mental health in the church context was with Pastor Rick Warren, when his son committed suicide, right? And then for me, like I said, I'm, still coming up in it, so I know these conversations were still happening, but just the first time I was kind of privy to it, I feel like that started kind of the ball rolling, where my eyes opening to where I started seeing churches actually talking about it and pastors talking about it, and again being open or even making referrals, right? Because like Crystal said, the church house is where everybody's going to go as far as our community. We
Mhm.
go there for, social needs, we go there for spiritual needs, and now
Mhm.
we're going there for, mental needs. And so um, having the pastor kind of being on board to say, hey, this, I can help you in this area, but you need a little more support. So let me make some referrals. And so that's kind of been really mind blowing to me. And like I said, I kind of been looking at Saddleback and kind of how they've kind of been rolling and kind of set out their mental health program. And I'm like, yeah, like it's really kind of normalizing it, like you said, where people are just like, no, hey, I have that, I struggle with that, and it's opening doors for the conversation to be had more often. Yeah. So let's see. So what are some ways that you feel, in addition to what we kind of been talking about, but that the church can get even more involved or build awareness?
I think this is a great way to begin with, bringing mental health professionals and having those conversations, consistently partnering
Mm,
with some of these counties. So some of the counties have programs where they work with faith-based organizations. LA County has a huge faith-based initiative that they have going on now. Um, and for these reasons, over 70% of people identify as having a faith. Why wouldn't we not meet them?
right,
The Black church has always been at the center of everything that we do. Why
right,
wouldn't we be there?
right.
So just staying involved in the conversations that are being had in your community, the community services that are being offered, having a seat at the table, is really important, because there's resources out there, and the church, who is the one meeting the needs of the community, should be benefiting from some of those resources.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so something that's been disturbing me a bit, and I'm gonna be doing some research on it this summer, is that the rate of folks nationally who are de-churched, um, who
Mhm.
are religiously unaffiliated, is growing
Mhm.
rapidly,
Mhm. Mhm.
including among African Americans,
Hmm.
Mhm.
which is like odd, because that, I mean, historically just has been our thing, right? Jesus and
Mhm.
church, like it's just our
Mhm.
thing. The data suggesting that that's less and less the case, and particularly among our younger generations. And so this is pretty problematic for me, because I have spent my professional life trying to like bridge the
Me
gap,
too.
right? Working
Mhm.
with this assumption that Black folks are church involved, that's where we go for
Mhm.
support. And now we need to, come to the church and help equip them to address the mental health needs of folks.
Hmm.
And what I'm getting a little worried about now is, just as we were talking about before, more folks might be inclined to seek professional help, which is good,
Yeah.
but they also might not be church involved, which I feel is bad. And so, we need both. We need, I even saw a shirt recently, right? Like therapy and Jesus, you know what I mean? Like we need both of the things. And so, in the same way that I had been focusing on equipping churches to, understand and better address mental health needs, I think now is a time to help churches and church leaders understand that um, folks are looking for a faith community experience that's relevant to them in real life, because we've got a lot of competition for our attention.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that we might be able to keep folks engaged in their church community, in their faith community, is by finding ways to meet their everyday needs. I
Right.
think mental health now, I'm starting to think about it as a bridge in a different way than I was thinking about it before. But that might be one of the ways, as pastors and folks are or ministry leaders are hearing this, as we begin to maybe even offer counseling services in our churches, and the groups like what Sedani was just describing, and our church has grief share group, like those sorts of things, that might draw folks who were kind of foot out the door anyway back into their faith community, because they're able to also get their mental and emotional needs met.
Right. 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 So, what are your ladies' thoughts on, you know, Christian-based counseling? Because it's, I mean, I know it's been around, and but I also, at least the circles that I've kind of been in, people would say, "Oh, I'm a Christian counselor because they're a Christian." But I'm like, but there's still certain ways to implement, right? ethically, because we're not supposed to go in there and talk about our faith and all those type of things unless it's introduced by the client. What are your thoughts on Christian-based counseling? Is this something like new that is kind of something new that's kind of coming to light, or something that's kind of been going on? And just kind of, what are your thoughts about it?
I want to speak to, and it kind of to me dovetails with what Dr. Hayes just said, which is when we're looking at the most unchurched generation for African Americans in our history, in this country. And so when you think about joining those two things, so say we have counseling, we have therapy, and then you get some people in the door who may not have a faith relationship, and maybe they get it once they come in our doors. And then, maybe they do Christian counseling. Well, you have to be very well trained, I think, to do that and do it well. Right. And unless you went, and I can speak to this because I've taught at now, public and private Christian university, unless you've been taught about it and how to do it, I wouldn't want you to do it. If that's not your expertise, right? I wouldn't want you to do it.
Yeah, agreed. I second that motion. And again, the thing that I try to, especially with church communities, try to always keep referring back to how we deal with our physical health, right? Because that is more familiar. Sometimes this whole, mental health world, folks are like, what kind of voodoo y'all up to? But going back to the physical health, it's rare that I'm gonna look into the faith orientation of my medical professionals. I'm trying to see, are you trained? You know what you're doing, right? And so this might not, I don't know, people might not like this. As a mental health professional who identifies as a Christian, I don't think that it is necessary for Christians to only go to a mental health provider who identifies as a Christian. For all the reasons that Damian just said, right? If you are working with a competent, skilled mental health professional, they can work with you and flow with your spiritual and religious orientation, regardless of what they personally identify with. And to be quite honest, exactly what you said, everybody who claims a certain identity is not, you know what I mean? Is maybe not, you don't know how biblically literate they are. You don't know in what ways they're interpreting scripture to apply to your particular situation, right? And teaching at a Christian institution, I can say there are some pretty well evidenced interventions that integrate faith and spirituality into practice, but that is not necessarily dependent on the provider's faith orientation, right? So I think the bottom line of what I would suggest is, if you need mental health help, you need to get you some mental health help.
Right.
If you have spiritual concerns, or going through a crisis of faith, have experienced religious trauma, those sorts of things, there are spiritual providers, leaders, pastors, ministers who are equipped to do that. I fear that if folks are trying to look for this whole package of I need, this perfectly Christian, biblical, whatever mental health experience, then they might just not get anything. And most of the stuff that folks is dealing with ain't got nothing to do with that faith anyway. You need somebody to untangle that sexual abuse that you experienced, or the, you know what I mean? Or, the trauma from your divorce, and you got relational stuff. You got relational stuff that most trained and qualified mental health professionals can help lead you through, even if they don't identify with your same faith orientation. People are not gonna like that. People are not gonna like it.
That's a good point, though. Today, you look like you was wanting to say something.
No, I'm okay with that. I agree, because I don't want to be you don't have a Jane of all trades, master of none. And it's and which hat am I gonna wear in the session? How far am I gonna go into and that's not my training. I don't have a seminary degree. I have Christian experience. I've been in the church since I was 8 years old, baptized, but that is not where I have my training. I'm not exegeting any text for you. We need to work on your trauma response and or some solution focused that whatever we need to stay in that lane, right? We can bring in certain interventions that include your experiences in church, right? We can suggest certain things. Oh, well, maybe you should go to pastoral counseling, because if this is like, as soon as I hear you saying that you're having a spiritual conflict, then that I'm refer you to pastor, just like I would expect the pastor to refer you to me if you are having like anxiety, depression, stuff like that. So no, I'm okay with that position.
Yeah.
And because we don't have schools that are teaching you how to do both well, we don't have schools that is just the expertise. For all of us who we taught in social work schools, you don't have enough time to teach a specialization, and that's going to take years. Like that's not just one of your classes. That's a whole certification program that you would
Yeah.
need to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would look for a qualified mental health professional based on that.
And I will throw in to the entire viewing audience, there is a mental health shortage. There is a shortage of mental health professionals.
There it is.
And so, anybody who's watching this that's like, I'm kind of feeling this whole topic. There is a need for folks who want to get cross-trained. Maybe you already have, that degree in divinity, and you know how to do all the exegesis. And now we need you to get a social work degree, right? And get that right. So I think there are some folks, maybe a handful, in that specialized area who could, properly do a spiritual assessment and integrate with all of the, cognitive behavioral therapy and a theology of mental health, and that can do that. But the reality is there are very few, and we need more people in this field who can service that unique population.
Yeah, that's that.
I'm gonna put a plug in after what Dr. Newton said. Yes, we need mental health professionals, and there's money to go to school. So there's more grants right now that pay for your graduate education. There are grants right now, they're like $25,000 you get per year to just get an MSW and promise to work in mental health. Like the program that I got my master's degree through was for Title 40. I promised to work in child welfare for 2 years after graduating. That money is still there as well. So there's money in it for social work.
I love that. So that's, again, a perfect segue into what you both are doing now as far as academia. What are some of the things that you are seeing in the academic world regarding mental health, and maybe what's being taught and or the students, like some of the struggles that they're kind of dealing with? Like, what are some things that are kind of popping up for you guys now that you feel like you're having to deal with while students are in practicum, practicum? What are some things that are now got seminary in the brain?
Look, they need to be in seminary too.
Wait a minute. Practicum, what are some things that are coming up?
So we are seeing some students with some significant mental health issues coming up for them that are impacting their ability to perform academically. Students having to take leaves of absence, and as staff, as faculty, we've been very supportive of that because we want people to be healthy. I know one of the other pushes that we've done is we make sure that we have care teams, and there's therapy services that we refer our students to get them that support. So there's that support there that you see, and social work is hard.
Yeah.
So you have their experience, they're out there doing internships and going to work in mental health during a crisis, a shortage of mental health professionals. So they're stressed, they're working hard, and we're teaching self-care. Is one of the things that NASW finally put in the code of ethics is self-care, because they realize if we don't take care of ourselves, there will be nobody to work in the field of social work. So we are stressing that in all of our classes from the very beginning, self-care and self-care plans.
Nice.
And yeah, there is a lot more money being, federally, statewide, being pushed at addressing the mental health crisis. Again, one of the kind of unexpected benefits from the pandemic. And so we are able to, service more students, service more clients. I work with doctoral students in social work, and there's just a lot of excitement and innovation and thinking about ways to, creatively address things. We've got students creating like apps and like, just all kinds of things to better promote mental health and service the needs that continue to go unserviced. I would agree that there's a lot of folks are stressed out. Folks are stressed out. And one of the things that is pretty common in the helping profession, but particularly in social work, is we attract wounded healers. Folks come with lots of lived experience with trauma, with, difficulty, and, wanting to be the social worker they never had or be the help that they never got. And that is, noble and beautiful, and also can make things very difficult if you don't have enough recovery time under your belt. And so sometimes I think, and this happened to me, you don't even know you have issues until all of a sudden you're learning about all these things and you're like, wait a minute, that's so it does kind of naturally, provoke a lot of introspection and just discovering things, which can be hard emotionally when you're like learning how to help folks unpack traumas and challenge, and then, managing your own stuff at the same time. So I completely agree that self-care piece is a big thing, helping folks, be a client, right? As you are also the provider, that most of us need to be in therapy on a regular basis to even be able to adequately do the work that we do with clients, right? Because we all have stuff.
Yeah. I love that. And when you said wounded healer, I'm like, that word, that phrase, it just speaks so much value, because a lot of us, we get in the profession for what you said, things that we've experienced, and we want to make sure the next generation or other people around us have the help that we feel like we didn't have. And that's kind of the driving force for a lot of us, our why, we would say, right? Our why into what we're doing. And it's important to have that because, as both of you said, the social work profession, it can be very heavy a lot of the times. And if we don't have things in place for us, therapy, a solid or a stable support system, a lot of mental health people, like you guys said, there's a shortage because people are checking out. People are checking out, and if the pay's not there, people are like, yeah, no, I can't. This isn't sustainable. This isn't a sustainable way of living. So, anything to kind of add to that as we get ready to kind of close out?
I'd say that one of the things that this next generation or post-pandemic generation, you saw the great resignation take place after the pandemic. And that was because people started saying, hey, wait a minute, life could be short. I want a quality of life. Yeah. And so when they're not staying in some of the, community mental health, some of those positions. So that's where we're seeing this huge loss of resources because people are leaving. Right? We still need people to help in those areas because, as we've identified as Christians, we're supposed to help the least of these. And the least of these don't have money. And so they need services. And my plea is for those folks, for us to get back to that communal aspect of the African American or African diaspora, where we know that, we're supposed to, I'm supposed to be my brother and my sister's keeper, that we are supposed to help the least of these, even if the job is hard. We also need to advocate so that funding comes down so that people get more workers in the vineyard, so the work isn't as hard. And so that's something that everybody can do, is advocate for more resources to come down through your community. One of the things that I do with my sorority is we go and we advocate for funding at the local and federal, state, and federal levels. And one of the causes that's near and dear to my heart is human trafficking. It's something that is impacting our communities in a large way. I'm interviewing students now for the MSW program who are survivors of human trafficking. And here, where we are, we're in a corridor. And so we have to advocate that services come down because we have wounded folks in our community that we need to help so that they can get past trauma and get to surviving and thriving. Right? So I want to say that I think that is something that we need right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any final or last thoughts for you, Dr. Haynes? Any shameless plugs?
She dropped the mic. This is good. Whoever is watching this right now, thank you for watching. May is Mental Health Month. Ask somebody you know. You done got your mental health checkup lately? This should be the month for mental health checkups, right? Let's just start to make it normal.
Absolutely.
So that folks don't feel awkward about it. And yeah, get a mental health checkup.
Love it, love it. Well, again, thank you both for taking the time to sit and talk and share, to educate us as a community of kind of what's going on, what you've been seeing, and some trends that you've been seeing, and then also some ways to kind of where we can evolve and kind of better support the church and just the community with mental health awareness. And shout out to the pastors that are in support of mental health. Again, really the unspoken heroes, because we really are church leaders. We really appreciate being able to have that collaboration, because it's, like I said, Jesus and faith, Jesus and mental health, it's a thing, right? And so being able to have that partnership, we are grateful. And again, thank you both ladies. Any final words? Either side?
My final word is let's continue to shatter the silence of secrecy. Let's ban that. Let's as leaders in our community make it an open and safe space, a brave space for people to come forward and speak, and for us to believe them, and then to help them. So let's do that. Let's shatter that. Let's shatter that, and let's also shatter the superhero. You don't have to be a superhero. Like we need to set up boundaries. We need to self-care ourselves. We can't, it's killing us. Particularly African American women, we say, oh, we just put the whole generation race on our back. Your back is gonna break. We need self-care. Yes. And we need to be able to say, no, I got too much on my plate. Somebody else is gonna have to pick up this torch. Yeah. So those are my last words.
Absolutely. And thank you both, and have a great evening.